Time once again to journey into the past for another sci-fi classic, Steven Spielberg's 1977 iconic UFO drama, Close Encounters of the Third Kind, which he wrote and directed. It stars Richard Dreyfuss as the primary character of Roy Neary, an everyday working electrician in Indiana who has a literal encounter with a UFO, and it turns his life upside down. And he's not the only one. Single mother Jillian is also terrorized by UFO activity at her farmhouse home, which leads to the abduction of her son Barry. The film also shows us the military and scientific investigations into repeated UFO activity in rural Northwest America, as well as the personal stories of individuals directly affected by their contact with these mysterious alien visitors. The film opens in the Sonoran Desert, where scientists and researchers have found several aircraft that were reported missing in 1945. They still have fuel on board and are fully operational, but their pilots are nowhere to be found. So where are they, and where have these perfectly maintained planes been hiding all of these years? In the special edition of the film, they even find a ship called the SS Cotopaxi right in the middle of the Gobi Desert, a striking and powerful image to begin the film with. And this was filmed using forced perspective. It was a model filmed close to the camera. It works quite well, I think. Back in the US, airline pilots report to air traffic control that they've nearly collided with something, but refused to declare it a UFO. At a farmhouse in the sticks of Muncie, Indiana, a young boy named Barry awakens to find that his toys are operating autonomously. He wanders down to the kitchen and sees something, but it's off camera. But the inference is that it's aliens. Meantime, there's a major power outage happening in the town where Roy lives. He's an electrical engineer working as a lineman. He goes on the road one night to investigate an outage, and that's where he experiences something. A powerful bright light over his truck, a loud droning noise, and some kind of electrical or spatial disturbances in the local area. The nearby mailboxes start shaking wildly. His radio and engine go off the fritz. The contents of his truck and glove compartment are somehow blown around inside the cabin. He meets some other locals, as well as young Barry and his mother Jillian down the road, where a few car-sized UFOs fly past them at street level. One of the more eccentric locals remarks, "They can fly rings around the moon, but we're years ahead of them on the highway," which I love that line. UFOs have been spotted over 5 counties apparently. Roy begins to exhibit a strange, obsessional behavior. It begins with shaving foam. He starts to play around with it, trying to sculpt it into a particular shape that's now burned into his mind since his encounter. His wife becomes increasingly concerned with his mental well-being, while his children are fascinated to learn more about the prospect of extraterrestrial visitors. The central issue, I think, with the main character of Roy is that we knew precious little about him prior to the UFO incident, and so we don't really have a baseline for what he's usually like. Because the incident happens so early on in the film, we only really get to know him in his eccentric and erratic state caused by the incident itself. This makes him a rather difficult protagonist to fully understand. There's a whole secondary plot involving some scientists, Claude Lacombe and David Laughlin, and the UN, working to decode some mysterious alien sounds, specifically a short musical sequence. The people of Dharamsala in northern India chant the sounds over and over. Laughlin deduces the musical notes are actually a set of coordinates. Meantime, Jillian and her son Barry are essentially terrorized by a UFO encounter at their home. The effect that the aliens appear to have is more of a paranormal haunting or something, with household objects being inexplicably thrown around the place, appliances and electronics activating and working by themselves. Even a vent is unscrewed and it opens. Very weird. Actually, aspects of this film are a lot darker than I remembered. What's frustrating is that she seems unable to keep her young son safe or under control for even a second, leaving me just feeling bad for the child to have such a careless and irresponsible mother. The child is abducted when he runs into the fields. A media circus ensues as representatives of the US Air Force meet with locals who've had these UFO experiences. The military seems skeptical of the whole thing, but at least the officials appear to be giving the public a hearing, even if it's not going anywhere. What I like about this scene is that I think it reflects a very different time in the public's relationship with their officials. Here, an articulate, thoughtful, and respectful man tries to reason with the people, saying that it would be nice to believe in all sorts of things: mental telepathy, time travel, immortality. He says he would love to find one of these lights in the sky because he's been looking for them for 15 years. One local says, why don't they just admit that the Air Force has been conducting secret tests in the foothills area? If this was real life, that's probably exactly what the military would tell people. But this man actually tries to respect the people by saying it would be easy to say yes to that. But he isn't going to mislead them. To tell the truth, he doesn't know what the people saw. It remains to be seen if he's actually involved in the eventual cover-up that emerges, however. The men in black descend on the scene. They wish to evacuate the area where the coordinates lead to. The location is in Wyoming. They tell the media that a train wreck has derailed and there's some kind of a toxic chemical gas that's leaked across the environment, killing animals, and it's deadly to humans. Of course, this isn't true. What's actually happening is that a temporary military base is being set up to meet the aliens. Meantime, Roy is slowly losing his mind, disturbing his wife and children at dinner as he shapes his mashed potatoes into the mountainous image stuck in his head. This culminates in him publicly humiliating his family as he upends a trash can bound for the garbage disposal truck and takes the can itself, gathers up some bricks from the yard and throws them into the house, shovels dirt in through the window and takes a neighbour's chicken wire. As you do. Typical Sunday for me, really. All of this so he has what he believes to be the appropriate tools and objects that he needs to sculpt a giant version of the mountainous shape in his living room. Well, this is just a bridge too far for his wife, who gathers up the children into the car and heads off to stay with her sister. So, driven by a force he doesn't entirely understand, he heads off to Devil's Tower in Wyoming and meets Jillian during the evacuation process because she's driven by the same extraterrestrial force that's influencing him. But after breaking through the quarantine zone, Roy and Jill are apprehended and brought before Lacombe and Lachlan, where they're questioned. They're not the only UFO close contacts who've been compelled to find this place. The military want to get them out, but Lacombe and Lachlan believe that they've been invited by the aliens for some reason. The military wants to use helicopters to disperse EZ4, which is a gas that will put them to sleep. Jillian and Roy reach the other side of the mountain by nightfall, but poor Larry isn't so lucky. They find a military site where scientists are attempting to communicate with the aliens by using a large display that projects multicolored lights and also broadcasts musical notes. A few spacecraft fly around the area at first. Roy has to see this for himself. Before he leaves Jillian, they kiss. Later, a gigantic mothership arrives and begins to communicate back. The flashing lights and musical communication jamming session goes on for a while until the mothership decides to open up. Out walks a number of abductees. They seem to be from the past, from different points of the early 20th century, and maybe some of them even earlier. First come the World War II pilots, now veterans I guess. They're all a little dazed and confused, and none of them appear to have aged. Later, people from various walks of life exit the ship, even animals, and of course, young Barry, Jillian's son. She's reunited with him in an understandably emotional and joyous moment. The boy is fine. But then the aliens come out of the ship. I have to say, the film manages to convey both a sense of genuine wonder of the unknown, but also the unnerving, borderline creepiness and horror of it all. The music does a great job keeping you enthralled and yet unnerved at the same time. Some kind of freaky-looking, tall, skinny alien spider walks down the platform first. Is that the mother alien or something? After that comes these small aliens like children, the typical big-headed, grey-type aliens that we've seen in lots of science fiction. Several military people have been selected to go with the aliens, but they also sent Roy, possibly because they believe he's been selected by the aliens for some reason. Jillian gets a few secret photographs out of the whole thing. One alien communicates with Lacombe using hand gestures. The aliens leave, the ship flies off, and the film ends. Close Encounters of the Third Kind feels like a substantial, heavy, and epic science fiction fantasy film, much like 2001: A Space Odyssey in terms of the sense of awe, wonder, and indeed terror it often elicits, and how real, raw, and grounded it feels, despite being a film about UFOs visiting Earth. It feels inspired by UFO mythology and eyewitness stories over the years. Richard Dreyfuss does a fantastic job in the role of Roy Neary, a guy that we can't fully understand given that he's driven by an unexplained impulse, and yet, as erratic, eccentric, and unstable as he can be throughout the film, you do still care about his journey and character story arc. This is despite the fact that the film ends in such a way that I don't think you're supposed to focus too much on the fact that this guy just basically left his wife and children behind on Earth and went off with some unknown aliens who we know nothing about. We don't even know if they're hostile, if they have a long-term sinister agenda, for example. Not a clue. He just leaves his family behind and flies off with some aliens. Of course, given his earlier lip lock with Jillian, maybe this guy had given up on his old life a little too easily. Incidentally, many years later, Steven Spielberg said that he made Close Encounters of the Third Kind before he had children, and that if he was making the film today, he would never have had Roy leave his family behind. But on the subject of the aliens, we don't learn very much about them or what they want. Perhaps they're just explorers. Fine. But we don't learn about any other intentions they might have, and they don't appear to be coming to Earth to impart some important message, warning, or wisdom. So in that respect, the film, in my opinion, doesn't appear to have a primary central message that it's attempting to convey to the audience. Like, for example, the character of Klaatu in The Day the Earth Stood Still leaves Earth with a warning for humanity, a choice between joining the aliens in peace or face obliteration. Not really much of a choice, to be honest. But it's inferred in Close Encounters of the Third Kind that the aliens we're dealing with in this film are probably friendly enough, despite the numerous abductions over the decades. Performances across the board are excellent. The UFO shots and visual effects still hold up very well today. I really like the designs of the spaceships in this film, and the alien creatures are made all the more otherworldly by how sparingly they're shown to us. Close Encounters is one of the few films I can think of that perfectly conveys mankind's quest to understand the greater mysteries of the universe and the excitement that comes with all of that, but also how frightening the unknown and otherworldly truly can be. It's a great movie. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Subscribe for more, and I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.